too few of our people have ever had enough power that they understand how important the political aspect of power is. Right. And so you always have to have some sort of political power. In my history, there always evolves a cult of Kurt, which if anybody who ever works for me has seen this, will break out in laughter because it's so fucking true. Right. So that's how I build it. Right. I build it by being the Yoda character. Right. So, but Trump did it by being the authoritative feature and the demanding authoritative person. And so we all do it in our own basic ways. But the average guy has never had. It's never been aristocracy, because that's what I mean by the term. He never had to be competent in a sphere and have the power of the sphere and actually understand what he's doing. Like some people get into these jobs and they have, it's because they're in a position of obtaining political influence, whatever, or money, and they actually don't know how to manage it. So Trump actually understands perfectly. He really does. He understands. He also understands you talk to like a general, you talk to the men, not the officers.
Yes.
Right. He gets the whole fucking thing, you know, I mean, and I just find it so funny that people think that because he's not particularly fast on his feet when it comes to a rhetorical discourse, that he doesn't know exactly what he's doing. Because I mean, he does know exactly what he's doing. You can't imagine being him, because he's not a bureaucrat.
That's right.
Right. He's not a politician.
That's right. He's operating in a different sphere than you are accustomed to operating in.
Right. And so it's like, I know a lot of guys, I designed some of the software, or I redesigned the software that a lot of the really big construction companies use. Right. And in getting with that, I got to meet all the big guys from all the big names people have heard about that build big things around the world. Right. Mm-hmm. And they're like street smart working class guys. They're working with billions of dollars. But the thing about those kind of guys is they're not credentialed. They're demonstrated. And so the difference between credentialed and demonstrated behavior is your understanding of man.
That's right.
So who does Trump deal with?
People.
Construction companies, right? Unions, government bureaucrats. Right. My favorite example, go find the show early on where he tries to promote his CFO. And his CFO comes on television and practically has a nervous breakdown. Right? That's how the country is run, by demonstrated competency. In his field, he's incredibly effective. But try to turn the guy into a politician, whatever.
Yeah.
Take a credentialed person and make that credentialed person have to demonstrate competency. It'll be just as obvious, right? I can't tell you how many PhDs I've hired that can't do anything except
they're used to operating in a very protected sphere.
Actually, they're used to answering questions that are 6 degrees of separation from implementation. Well, I mean, think of it as like this, right? What happens in any decision tree is there's a guy somewhere who's either turning dirt into metal,
right,
or taking the metal and bending it, right, or making a machine that helps him bend it, or just work your way up the thing. So it's not that we don't need these hierarchies. My first wife's father was a metallurgical engineer.
Nice.
Right. And what they do is actually interesting, right? It's pretty, because they have to figure out what composition of elements are in this thing, what temperature it has to be for this set of mixture to cool over this length of trough. I mean, it's all math, right? I mean, so you need that guy, but how many degrees of separation is he from the falsification of his theory? Not many.
Right. That's right. He's operational.
Well, yeah, he is operational in the sense that, and it's also important that his feedback loop is small, right? So the problem with the reason I don't like to be a CEO really is the feedback loop is years, right? You have to stay 2 to 3 years ahead of where your company is, and you have to be thinking 5 to 10 years ahead of it. Right? Because that's how long it takes you to move the fucking boat. It's like this. I have a friend who is a friend of a friend. Is a friend of old friend of mine. He used to drive B-52 bombers. He says,
Nice.
"Well, I started out flying jets, and if you move a jet, you take this jet, you go like this, the whole fucking thing instantaneously goes like that, right? I mean, faster than you can think. Sort of like how I felt driving my Ferrari 911 X50, way too fast for human reaction times, right? But you get into B-52, it says you move that stick, and a couple of miles down the road, it starts to move.
Oh yeah.
Right. Well, that's the problem with being. And so what happens in companies is, and it happens in governments, and it happens in any kind of place where you have authority, right? You have any authority at all, is there all of a sudden your desire to actually do something measurable, creative, is now so disconnected that you end up doing things that are disconnected. Most CEOs demonstrate this by acquisitions of companies they can't handle, right? Which is
not a useful thing to do.
Not a useful thing to do. Most financial firms do it by leverage buyouts of companies they are incapable of managing and barely understand. But this happens in credentialism too, right? It happens in political systems where people are wanting to find they're credentialed, they feel they're superior, they want to exercise this mind, yet what they're really in is a maintenance job.
Okay.
And so what they do is work will expand to fill available time. Now, that's a nice way of saying it, but what work will? Well, their self-satisfaction.
Justification
will expand. So this happens anywhere where there's enough distance between the actions you take and the negative feedback loop, right? That happens. So this is
distance
Correct.
from the Red Queen.
Correct. Thank you. Our government built out.
Oh my!
It's built on credentialism. Now, secondly, the credentialism they've built out a credentialism in a thing that there's almost no market feedback loop.
You're right.
Right. So there's no responsibility, no
accountability. The Red Queen is nowhere to be seen.
There's no Red Queen to be seen at all. So there's no the only evolutionary pressure is systemic failure.
Oh, right. Well, come to speak of it.
Oh yes,
right around the corner.
Yes. So the problem, the thing that you want, of course, is it's not to say that a politician, the ability to speak in political terms isn't valuable. My point is, it's better learned by acting lessons than it is by participating in politics. And that credentialism should have no bearing on who gets hired in a government. We should hire people from business and industry and the military in order to feed the government. Because the people who are credentialed, the academy, and so, they're all fucking idiots. And it's demonstrable that they're idiots because there's no negative feedback loop. Oh. And this is worse among pure politicals. Because if you're a CEO, like I bought a company, they're pretty good size. I'm gonna get all the devs in there. And they're like, oh my God, I'm talking. And I start explaining their business to them. It's the first time they've understood their business. Right? I explain their business to you, which is what I have to do whenever I acquire a company, to be honest with you, is explain the business to the people. Because the reason I can acquire the company.
There's a reason for this. They don't know what they're doing.
It's like all of us, we run on a mythology.
That's right.
Right. And so but the truth is, people really like the truth when it empowers them. Mm-hmm. And so I'm taking this company that says, And I know the CEO, and he's not incompetent. He's sold other companies before, but he's not competent in this one. And so I get in front of we
It's
finally
the
get
only
it.
one that counts in this case.
Well, I mean, they're flat, right? They've been flat. Well, I mean, they're flat for really stupid reasons, and which I sort of explained to them. And this all comes from money sending direction downward instead of operational analysis of the chain between at what's being done with the customer, what's being performed, and the money, right? You want this up. Operational analysis.
Mhm.
Here, right? So what do you think business process engineering is? It's operational analysis. What do you think continuous recursive disambiguation is? It's operational analysis. So what do you think the problem with credentialism is? It's a failure of operational feedback loops, right? What does continuously recursive mean? It means continuous feedback. If there's no continuous feedback, it's not continuously recursive. In other words, it's not evolving.
Fast, it's not operational if it's well sitting, is what you just said.
Correct.
It's collecting dust and rust.
Well, it's okay, but like if you go to, there's guys who have military careers, right? And the military is a procedural based organization, right? Now they don't do great customer service, but they follow procedure.
Okay.
Right? They're not credentialed.
No.
They came up through an operational process of working with guys who have 85 to 95, maybe 100 IQs, and getting them to do complex shit together in a highly organized fashion by following very specific rules. And if some general somewhere or some captain says this isn't working right enough, you change the rules and operate by the new rules. That's actually the government you want. You want what's called a Prussian model of government. So the problem is we've created a credentialed, right, which was a mistake, because the credentialed system that arose in England and in Prussia came out of the military. It didn't come out of the academy. Does this make sense?
Yes, I understand.
Right. And so what we wanted in this country was to continue our process of bringing people in from commerce and the military, people who have extraordinary feedback loops. And then all of a sudden we started getting people, beginning with our first macro fucking moron, which was Wilson. All right. You get these credentialed people in, and they're living a mythology, not an evidence. And so we have an academy and we have a government that's populated by people who are living by a mythology, who are trying to talk to each other, and they're dismissing the populace. Whereas a general and a CEO, you have to talk to your workers.
Yes.
Right.
I understand you.
Right. And so this is where you and Quigley call, I think it's Quigley, the overproduction of elites, right?
No, that's Turchin.
Turchin. They're not elites.
We understand one another.
Right. An elite is aristocratic. What does aristocratic mean? Rule by the best. How do you know they're the best? By demonstrated capacity in a field that is mercilessly sorted. It sorts mercilessly, right? So I mean, I sort of think it's humorous. Well, Mark Zuckerberg, of course, wouldn't be in control other than he did the right thing, which is a lot of people should do, is create a stock system where you can't be replaced, right? Right. I think that's actually fine. The problem is he actually is terrible at his job. He's not a good judge of morality.
Okay, I'll go with that.
Right. And so this is the problem that's spread around the cult of San Francisco is it's a cult of exceptionalism. In other words, it's a cult. And so it's a separatist cult of chosen people. They think they're chosen, right? And special, when they're actually demonstrating that they are just virtue signaling, and that's all. And so they found the they found a business that is completely speculative advertising, that has no accountability advertising, that however does provide access to a market advertising by trading a free service, right, which is the communication, in exchange for being subject to advertising, right? And the fact that this is made possible by the cheapness of the internet. In other words, they free ride on the backbone. Right? Whereas in the past, well, this is a great analogy. In the past, every country had to have its own military to guard its own shipping. In the past, every communication system had to be paid for by the people who were communicating, right? But the internet did the information and the global information system, which was to provide public subsidy of a universal transport system, what the Romans did to roads and what the Americans and British did to the seas, which is we reduced the infrastructure costs of transport. So anyway, the real net here is that anything that doesn't have a red queen will go bad.
You want to be near the red queen because she's very valuable.
Right. And so the way most organizations, monopoly organizations, challenge this, the way militaries challenge it, is war games. And so what I've recommended, and I did this the minute we got into the COVID thing, is why did the CDC fail? There's no war game. Right? Why do governments fail? There's no war game. Why do treasuries fail? There's no war game. Right? There's too many people in a decision-making line with too fragmentary information.
Yes.
Right. And so they make decisions that they lack the knowledge to make the decisions. Yes. And so, I've been, given that I've spent a lot of my life solving this particular problem.
Yes.
It's really, it's a competency problem.
Yes.
Now, this brings us to the next level of the credentialism problem. You know the telephone game?
Yes.
You're right. You tell us the person next to you.
Exactly what it is.
Right. And so what happens is that the story gets distorted with every.
Yes.
So, and I think I've probably told you this before. What I've done with companies in the past is I get a room and I fill it with whiteboards. I mean, the big ones on the walls. So I just use colored markers and I diagram like from the instant a request comes into the organization from this or a vendor or whatever. Mm-hmm. So you do this to the corporation, right? Then you go out and you build off. So I pull people in and I walk them through how their business works, and they're always floored. Now this takes me a while, right? I can't fucking do it overnight. It might take me a week or 3 weeks or a month, right? It's not whatever. So you have to have the patience. But the reason is it's an operational decision. It's not a window. Right. And so if you have a window, you develop a myth. My favorite one in this particular case is between the researchers, the paralegals, and the lawyers. The amount of information loss in that sequence was amazing to me. The same problem exists everywhere. It's that there's actually when you tell people you're going to learn this job, you're going to learn the mythology of this window. And then you go through with and when they're doing it, you're just asking everybody in every job,
yes,
for 40 minutes, if they understand the inputs, actions, and outputs. Right? That's it. It's called business process engineering, right? So it's like the real answer here is that if you only have people who are credentialed, that's a mythology. That they're only can't have local information. They're in a particular piece of the business that they only see through a window, right? Then they're operating on that mythology. If they're in a department, they only understand that mythology. And so there's all these mythologies going together. And what we hope is that rules do it. But that's not the same as understanding. Right? And so the difference between a rule and understanding is the rule is what is the summary of the understanding. right? And so it's like any statistical function, it loses information,
Yes.
right? The rule is what you do to in the do, all right? But the understanding is why you do it.
Yes.
Now, if you know why, you can absorb errors, identify errors. But if you launder causality, you can no longer identify errors. So this is why stupid things happen, like the people in the financial sector retire because of this set of windfalls, right? In the 90s or 2000s. But now you've lost all those people who went through the 70s and 80s economic crisis, and there's nobody with it operational understanding, right? So we've built this whole academy system wrong. What we want to do is amplify what the Germans did and build the what do you call it? Apprenticeship system.
Yes.
That's the answer to pretty much every problem. And the answer to the apprenticeship system is there's if there is ever a point at which you're no longer in a market, you have to create a negative market, which is a war game to test it with. And so the institution we're missing is that.
The war game business.
Right. So to some degree, regulators try to provide this goal, but they have the wrong attitude, right? The wrong objective. We're looking for people who are trying to make an organization fail, right? It's okay if you fail, but we want you to fail on something that isn't the core mission of your organization under duress. The CDC being a great example, the fucking academy being the most horrible example, and the government being another horrible example.
Wait, I would not call them horrible examples, but exceptional in their way.
Yeah, I mean, horrifying.
There you go.
Now we're in horrifying example.
Yes.
So the problem though is that people don't want to be subject to testing. That's what part of what people want to be credentialed for. That's important. Right. Is evasion of testing. That's one of the things I like being an entrepreneur versus a tested person because it's under my control. So I'd rather be an entrepreneur and be tested by the real world than tested by some political system, which is what's happened.
Oh yeah.
So if you don't war game, you develop all sorts of regulations and rules and whatever. But those become self-reinforcing of the very credentialism we're trying to overcome. So the only way to fix an academy or to fix the medical system, any system that's become corrupt, is to try to make it fail. And so that's really easy. In my business as a retailer, we use secret shoppers.
Yeah.
And we send secret shoppers around, and they try to trick you, get you to steal, whatever, right? And it was amazing, right? So that's actually what you want. You don't want, and I can't tell you how many people we fired after they stole 30 grand.
Oh my!
It was common, right? And an interesting place was the custom framing business. Custom framing is no different from custom car stuff, right? I mean, it's highly overpriced, right? For what is actually, it's a custom job, but it's highly overpriced. And so there's a lot of room for all sorts of shenanigans, right? So if you're going to take a deposit, you write down, you actually write down the stuff and you go frame it, and you give a person a thing with this, but you pocketed the difference, right? And so that's but that happens everywhere. So secret shoppers. Well, how does the military do it? They do it by war games.
They do it with their secret shoppers are mean.
So notice that, yeah, exactly. So notice that I didn't say the medical industry does it. The financial industry does it. The government does it, and the academy does it, and the advertising industry does it. I mean, can you imagine what happened if we tried to get advertising? We used the equivalent of war games against advertisers. We have the most honest advertising. So this is the difference between this is just increasing the scope of falsification in the economy to compensate for what the anonymity that occurs as market scale.